Welcome back to the official Colorado Sports Hall of Fame podcast. I'm Dave Plati.
And I'm Jim Saccomano, and we are your co-hosts now with over 90 years of experience working in Colorado sports. Myself with the Denver Broncos, and Dave with the CU Buffaloes, and at one time, both of us with the Denver Bears, among our many other experiences.
This week, we continue revealing 150 significant moments in Colorado sports history as we celebrate the state's 150th birthday this August 1st, the date in 1876 that Colorado was admitted as the 38th state in the Union. Little history lesson for y'all. A veteran committee that has concluded the first phase of eventual ranking the top 50 will meet soon to rank in order what we deem to be the top 50 moments. In the end, 19 people with over 800 years combined experience working or covering sports in the state have contributed to select those. We have been counting down at a rate of 5 per week and then daily for the top 10 come the end of July.
We've already covered numbers 86 through 150 in our last 13 podcasts. So up next are numbers 81 through 85. A reminder that all are being archived at the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame website, along with all our podcasts. Go to coloradosports.org, click on the menu bar, and then top 150 moments or podcasts.
But first, we'd like to revisit some other moments in Colorado sports history that aren't in the top 150, often in or around the date we do our podcast. We just hit 2,000 of these moments that have been identified, all chronologically signifying their importance at the time. We're remembering those that had a significant impact on the state sports scene. For example,
on April 5th, 1993, after years of attempting to lure Major League Baseball to Denver, the Colorado Rockies played the inaugural game in franchise history, a 3-0 loss in Shea Stadium to the New York Mets. Dwight Gooden pitched a 4-hit shutout for the Mets, besting David Need, who took the loss, and he allowed just 2 runs in 5 innings.
Let's go all the way back to April 6th of 1929. For the second time in 5 years, a small Colorado high school made noise in the National Interscholastic Basketball Championship. This time it was Joe's High School from a small community about 100 miles due east of Denver. Its enrollment hovered around 60 most years. Joe's won the state title to qualify for the national event in Chicago and opened with a 41-7 win over Laurel, Delaware, and then beat Yankton, South Dakota 22-20 to reach the quarterfinals, where it beat Jena, Louisiana 32-20. The amazing run ended with a semifinal loss to Oklahoma City's Classen High by a score of 29-23. But Joe's did defeat Jackson, Michigan to claim third place in the nation.
That remains one of the great moments in national history, I think, Dave. Now, on April 11th, 2009, the CSU baseball team set the RMAC record for most home runs in a game with 11 in a 32-23 win over Colorado Christian. Also setting the record for the most total bases, 70. It was the first game of a doubleheader.
Probably the second game was 2-1, and that was CSU Pueblo, by the way. Then let's go back to April 3rd, 1947. Charles Babe Lind became the first Colorado-born golfer to play in the Masters golf tournament. And of course, the Masters is coming up this weekend. The Denver native tied for 45th with a 75, 76, 75, 77, 303. That's 15 over par scorecard, but was the third of the 7 amateurs who competed. He was inducted into the Colorado Golf Hall of Fame in 1973 and the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame in 2004.
This is Mark Johnson, voice of the Colorado Buffaloes. As we count down the greatest moments in Colorado sports history, it's worth remembering that great sports moments don't just happen. They're built on preparation, resilience, and staying healthy. And in Colorado, a great sports moment can mean something different to everyone, from Hall of Fame athletes to anyone who simply wants to keep moving. Whether you're chasing championships, personal bests, or just a pain-free morning run, the team at CU Sports Medicine and Performance Center delivers exceptional sports medicine care, from prevention and recovery to performance. Founded right here in Boulder, the CU Sports Medicine and Performance Center brings together CU medicine providers and Boulder community health clinicians to provide comprehensive care that's close to home and rooted in the community they serve. Learn more at cusportsmedicincenter.com.
And now, On with the countdown.
6. One of the greatest moments in Colorado sports history. Number 85.
On March 26, 2026, and that's just last week, the Colorado Mesa women's basketball team just missed advancing to the Division II title game, falling to Indiana Pennsylvania University 75-70. The Mavericks actually fell behind 12-0, but rallied to tie the game at 23-all before trailing 36-29 at the half. CMU never got closer than 4 the rest of the way. Olivia Reed-Thine led Mesa with 34 points and 14 rebounds with 3 block shots as the Mavericks finished the season with a 37-2 record, having won 34 in a row. That's the longest winning streak in state history for a men's or women's team, as well are the 37 wins that the Mavericks posted this past season.
One of the greatest moments in Colorado sports history. Number 84.
On March 25th, 2000, the Metro State Roadrunners dealt favorite Kentucky Wesleyan a 97-79 setback to claim the NCAA Division II men's basketball championship, avenging a loss to the team in the 99 finals. All-American and tournament MVP DeMarcos Anzures led the way with 32 points, and Mike Dunlap was honored as the NABC National Coach of the Year as Metro finished with a 33-4 record. Anzures was the first Division II state collegiate to earn first-team All-American honors.
One of the greatest moments in Colorado sports history. Number 83.
On August 14th, 1986, the first regular PGA Tour stop in the state since the Denver Open from 1947 to 63 debuted in Castle Rock as Denver oil man Jack Vickers created the International at Castle Pines. It featured the unique Stableford scoring format. Ken Green won the inaugural event over Bernard Langer, but not all players liked the format. Jack Nicklaus, for one, thought it was stupid and silly, and he was good friends with Vickers.
One of the greatest moments in Colorado sports history. Number 82.
On November 21st, 2010, the Colorado Rockies claimed the Major League Soccer Cup title, defeating FC Dallas 2-1 in extra time in Serrano. Forward Macumba Candy shot was deflected by a Dallas defender and scored as an own goal. The Rapids finished 12, 8, and 10 for fifth place in the more competitive Western Conference, but were actually seeded third in the playoffs, defeating Columbus and San Jose to reach the final.
One of the greatest moments in Colorado sports history. Number 81.
On May 28, 1979, the first Boulder is held, starting and ending on the streets of Boulder. The co-creation of Bank of Boulder President Steve Bosley and Olympic medalist Frank Shorter, the inaugural race had 2,200 finishers. In 1981, in cooperation with the University of Colorado, the race's finish was moved to Folsom Field, with Shorter the winner. In the years since, it has annually drawn anywhere from 40 to 50,000 runners, over 1.5 million finishers through 2025. The event is the third largest race in the nation and ends in the country's largest Memorial Day celebration inside of Folsom Field. At this time, we want to welcome the founders of the Boulder, Steve Bosley and 2008 Colorado Sports Hall of Fame inductee Frank Shorter. Welcome to our podcast, gentlemen.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Glad to be part of it.
First of all, I want to know, how did a bank president and an Olympian gold medalist even meet?
I'm going to answer that. It was at the suggestion of one of my law friends who was named Joe French. He was the county attorney, and he had a partner named Bob Stone, French and Stone, and they were runners. So when I got here, right after finishing law school in 1974, I was studying for the bar. I went to work for them, and then eventually started my own businesses. And Joe said, hey, I have this banker friend who just moved to town. The guy is really, really smart. He's a great organizer. He's starting this bank up in North Boulder. And so I got in my car and drove up to the drive-up window at the trailer that was then the bank. and signed up for one of the first accounts. Fast forward several years, Steve is financing some stores I had started and clothing company I had started. And so I used to visit him just to talk track and running and hang out in his office. And he told me, and Steve can correct me, he said, I want to start a track meet for kids. And this is because they're cutting out gym in school and kids aren't getting exercise. So I'm going to have a track meet, and it's going to be for very young kids. And we're going to give prizes 10 deep. And I thought about it for a second, and road racing had just started to blossom at that point. And I said, well, why don't we put on a road race? And I was lucky because that's about as much as I can do in terms of organizing and putting on something. The good news was Steve is one of the world's best organizers. And that's evidenced by the fact that he's been on the Colorado Board of Regents. He's done all sorts of stuff in the community. And this was just another thing for him to take on. So that's what happened. We organized that first race.
I've got
Steve?
to add something to that. When I was talking about the track meet, which also came about in part, my kids were in youth track, and I was getting disgusted with the little league attitude, and told Frank that then we got into I want to put on a track meet. And after discussing it for a while, he said, why don't you do a road race? And I said, what's a road race?
Well, it could be from A to B or A to A.
The creation of the race had to be one of the few in the nation at the time. And that's a very good explanation of how it all came to be. How did you come up with the name of Boulder Boulder?
Well, we were doing some unique things at the bank, offering unique and new services. And with each one of them, we introduced it as the Boulder Bankers Do It Again. And this genius communications friend that I had that has been with me, work with me through my two banking ventures in Boulder. We came
Jim
up,
Adler. It was Jim Adler.
Jim Adler. And we came up with, we're not even sure where Boulder came from, but we said, well, let's put it on the shelf. It might come in handy someday. And when it actually was birthed, I was at his office and he was asking me how things were going, and we were discussing. And he says that I came up with it, and I think that he came up with it, but it appeared, and it's been, what a great name. And so it's survived.
And he came up with the logo, right, Steve?
Yes, he had a hand in all of it.
Yes, yes. And what I like is the fact that this was sort of the confluence of the whole history. You know, the idea you started road races and people started to promote them. And Jim had just moved to the Boulder area a couple of years before. So all this, he formed a company called Genesis back east, and he moved an office out here and liked it so much, he said, well, I got to find a way to stay, which a lot of the runners did. And so, you know, it was all part of that trend.
So let's go back to the early history of the race. The first two Boulder Boulders in town ended first in North Boulder Park and then at Boulder High School with 2,200 and 4,900 finishers respectively. When moved to Folsom Field, the number of entrants and finishers spiked every year until leveling off recently. First, how did it come about that the finish was moved to the stadium? And Frank, you were the first winner to cross the finish line in Folsom Field. So why don't you both recall what that felt like?
Well, it was great. And I felt very happy because I was on the downward side of the curve, the bell curve of my career. And I actually was very thankful because CU at the time, when Jerry Quiller was the coach, had a runner from England named Mark Scrutton, who was just coming up through the university system, went on to make the Olympic team for England. And I think he probably should have won the race, but I think he hadn't raced as much at altitude. And as for who was really responsible, CU, University of Colorado, contacted us, right, Steve? And they said, well, you want to finish in our stadium?
Well,
and Steve, how long did it take to say yes to that?
well, it did for a little while. Eddie Crowder, who was the athletic director, called me and said, you got to finish at CU. And I said, no. And he said, why? And I said, no, I don't think it's a good idea. And the next day I get a call from the president's office asking if
Yep.
he would join, if I would join he and Eddie.
Yeah, Arnold Weber.
Arnold Weber. And he
Arnold Weber.
he said, what's your problem? Why? And I said, because you guys could control us. And he said, you're dead wrong. He said, it's a partnership and it's a handshake and partners would take care of each other. And that was it. And that has survived, not survived, it's survived and thrived very well.
Now you launch over 90 waves in about 2 hours every year, and yet provide all with their exact timing within hours. That is just crazy when you think about it.
Well, it's
Well,
90.
I'm gonna because Steve is gonna be too modest here. Steve came up with the algorithm. It was his idea to do a wave start, waves of a certain number of people, and we could take all day when Steve starts talking and explains how he came up with this algorithm and how he goes back and modifies it every year so that the flow is always constant, and that's why you never see big herds of people coming into the stadium. The timing's perfect. It's always and that's all Steve. That's all, Steve. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is you talk about being open about it, the university and the race, having just a verbal agreement. Steve and Cliff Bosley has maintained this. They will give any other race in the world that wants to come and know what that algorithm is, they'll share it.
Wow.
So that's their contribution to the world of road racing now. And it started here in Boulder.
Well, we did invent it and we perfected it, and it got perfected continuously. And many races, this is going to, well, we're among friends, many races have come and observed it. And many have said, that's too much work, which is just fine because it puts us in the rarefied air of and the accuracy of it is, well, it's in existence and it works, and it takes Cliff and me, Cliff's on the too, several days, several hours every year as we reanalyze every tiny aspect of it and make very finite adjustments to keep it perfect.
But here's how Steve organized it before. We would have finishing shoots. And then we'd have volunteers. I know because my daughter, Julie, who's now a vet, was 10 years old, and she would grab finishing numbers, tags, and they would do the tags, and someone at the finish line would take a picture of about every 10th tag that came through, and they would get all the numbers collected, and they would sync it with the photo of the finish. And Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, you could give
talked about that.
So we want to bring in Cliff.
He's on.
Yeah, I can sure respond. And over the years, it's been an honor. Frank's been an official starter 3 times. Steve's been an official starter twice. Last year, probably one of our most unique showings was University of Colorado superfan Miss Peggy and Rick George. And at 100 years old, she stood on the official starters tower. Steve was there, And Steve, not putting words in your mouth, but I think you said that she refused to sit for the entire 2 minute and 2 hour and 38 minute launch.
Wow. And I know you've had other celebrities through the years, local celebrities start and shoot that gun as well.
Yeah, Ted Boyle, Mike Bone, Chip, Rick Riley, Ed McCaffrey. Some of these are, I think, your Hall of Famers also.
Cool.
That's amazing stuff. That's amazing. The race annually has over 45 to 50,000 registrants and or finishers. And you provide them with food and beverage post race. How have you managed that undertaking through the years?
Cliff, why don't you comment?
Well, Steve kind of
Cliff has the gene.
yeah.
He's
Of the five
he's
kids,
got the gene was passed on.
yeah, the five kids, we went 5 for 5 with that checklist organizing gene. And but we pack 50. Last year it was 52,000 snack bags
Oh
on
my
Saturday
God.
for the race. And we have an assembly line of about 350 people on 36 different assembly lines, and it takes about 4 hours to build out 52,000 snack bags. And then 2 days later, we distributed 52,000 snack bags on race day.
Full disclosure, I've worked all but two of the races, and the first three I worked, I was in the field house stuffing those lunches. But back then, we didn't have 50,000 to sort, so I'm glad you moved me into something else after those 3 years. There have been numerous innovations with the race throughout its 47-year history, starting with the finish in Folsom. Wheelchair or pushroom divisions were added. The elite runners were separated from the public and had their own races. But the biggest might have been getting local television to cover the race live. How did that come about?
Well, it's they came to us after the second race. Their news director participated, went back and talked to Roger
Did we
Ogden
lose
at
you?
Channel 7, and they came to see me and talk about it. And Roger, at the conclusion of the meeting, said, "We want to do it next year and we want to do it live." Marv said he had a heart attack. He didn't know that he was proposing to do it live. And there was this genius that worked for them that they turned it over to, and they were number one in every 30-minute segment on the air for the entire time that they did it. And they won 17 Emmys.
Wow. Another innovation was the whale, the huge red truck that drove the media around the race course. Where did that idea come from?
Well, it started out like every race. We didn't know what we were doing, and still sometimes. And so we had a pickup for the media. And of course, that was very quickly, we saw that wasn't going to work. So the next year we had a flatbed truck so that more of them could get on, and that didn't work. And somebody said, what we need to do is build a grandstand on the back of that truck, and quickly evolved into let's build our own moving grandstand. And I'm not even sure how it happened. I drove past
I
this park.
What I heard was you took a 10-foot wide trailer that was really, really old and scraped the top off of it, and that platform became the trailer.
Well, yeah, I was driving past this park, and there was one for sale, and it was big, um, and we did. A friend of ours took it to the dump and scraped it off. The key that made this, a lot of keys made this work. It was an old style, and the I-beams in it were a lot bigger than the modern ones. So we could build it what was it, Cliff? 20,000 pounds, we figured.
Yeah, you could put about 100 people, and it was about 20,000 pounds is what it would carry.
It One year, Fred LeBeau came out and he wanted to see the truck. And the next year, I happened to notice on television they had a rolling grandstand. And I called in and talked to him about it. And he said, by the way, how much did yours cost? And I said, oh, about $5,000. He said, mine cost 25,000. And he
Hmm.
said, and
Yeah,
then the great compliment, he said, if you've noticed, marathons all over the world now have moving grandstands.
yeah.
And
And Fred
you,
Lebo was the really that well, he was
Fred
Steve's
Lebo,
equivalent at the New York City Marathon. He's the one who really built the marathon there over time.
well, and then with KCNC TV, we built a special platform for them. So instead of flying, well, they had their helicopter too, but that was they were right in front of the race, telling, doing it live.
Amazing. Then the ultimate tinkering, the creation of the International Team Challenge. What were the thoughts behind that?
Well, like so many things, things evolve. Um, Early on, we were saying, hey, we can't identify the women at the finish line. They're obviously swallowed up in the crowd. And very quickly, we said, well, let's do separate races. And the only way to do that is put them at the last. And that was the beginning of it. So separate races so we could give the women the attention that they should have. And then we started inviting, uh, started creating and inviting international runners from around the world. And it grew dramatically. And it's one of those things you don't remember exactly how. And watching the Olympics one day and said, well, each country is limited for each event to 3 participants. There was a story read that there was one year where then the 100-yard dash, America had the 10th fastest in the world, but yet they only three can compete. So we thought it's a tried and proper formula that the teams would have 3 members, but we then added the idea of having team prize money as well as individual prize money, which has turned out to be um, it's held us well. And
And
I guess a side note to brag a little bit. All the races getting started, the big ones had prize money. Properly so. It was our race was successful right out of the chute because Frank Shorter and a number of national class runners participated. If Frank went to a race, it was going to be successful. And so to continue with that, uh, we always felt it was a moral obligation to then it was called elites before it was professional, which is another story. Um, and we have continued to maintain very big prize money. Other races have had to have changed for reasons that mostly I think well structure, but we'll maintain that commitment to inviting and honoring uh, the big names in road racing in the world.
And to add on to this, this has also had a wonderful filter down effect for the part of the world where runners are coming up, but they don't have the notoriety, they don't have the resources. And so a team like Ecuador could form a 3-man team and come to the Boulder. They wouldn't have been able to get really to any other road race in the country, much less the world. And so it became sort of a conduit and a way to make it more available. And like I think a fairer way to discover the new talent. And again, that was Steve's idea. And
Well,
it worked.
to add to that, we pay all expenses, travel, and take care of them
Yep.
totally. So, as you said, a poorer country that might not necessarily be able to do that, every country can send a team.
And speaking of which countries, you've brought in communist countries before. It's almost like you've extended a peace handshake around the world because I believe Russia and China have had teams here before. And of course, Mexico, Japan, Kenya's always been big. Ethiopia are some of the ones that are regulars, correct?
Everybody's invited, every country.
Well, one of the big changes, unfortunately, had to occur after the Boston Marathon bombing. What did that do to the race? What complexities had to change from that?
Cliff?
The Yeah, that did add a different wrinkle, and we were able to work with our local law enforcement, regional law enforcement, state law enforcement, and federal law enforcement partners. And at the time, there may have been over a dozen different entities represented in the room, including Department of Homeland Security and the FBI. The and that Boston Marathon bombing in 2013 occurred 6 weeks prior to the Boulder. So 50% of our time was spent working with those law enforcement partners to be ready to do the Boulder. We were able to successfully manage the race, and it was that planning that allowed it. In fact, our counterparts at the Atlanta Peachtree Road Race came with their local law enforcement and regional law enforcement EMS folks to sit in our command post and observe all of the different planning and preparation things that we did. One unique element that we created that year was akin to maybe the flying air marshals. It's our program called Eyes and Ears. And with off-duty law enforcement officers, we place them in every wave in the race. And they essentially are our eyes and ears while they're either running, jogging, or walking the race, and have a connection to our command post to relay real-time information about things that they see on the course. And that still exists to today.
That's
I'd add to that we don't know who they are. Their names are turned over when they volunteer to the local police. We don't know how they're identified. We don't know who and if who's carrying. And we've tried to work with the media, not somebody said using them, absolutely not, to tell them the story, emphasizing this isn't to say to people you're safe. This is to tell the bad guys every 200 meters there's somebody running past you that is part of this program. We don't know what effect it has, but it's got to be a positive.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It's meant not to be noticed.
Yes. The races through the years have helped benefit the U.S. Olympic team, the CU track program, and eventually has produced the nation's largest Memorial Day celebration with 40,000 plus in attendance every year at Folsom Field. Those are almost over the top when it comes to community involvement. Where did those ideas come from?
So should I talk about the evolution?
Well, yeah, you're the one who should talk about it.
Well, when we started, we picked Memorial Day for lots of reasons, and beginning of the summer. But we chose not to make any reference to Memorial Day. We didn't want to be accused of exploiting the holiday. It always irritated me to drive past an auto dealership and saying Memorial Day special. One time I went in and asked the salesman, tell me about Memorial Day, and he couldn't. But this guy that I talked about, Lon Lee from KCNC, said, hey, I've got a friend, we can do a flyover. And so we said, well, let's do that. And it took us, Cliff, 8 years to build up to what we're doing now. We added one piece a year. We had a military advisory board of 2 active duty and 2 veterans. And anything that we brought in, they had to approve of unanimously. Any change, everything was going to be done absolutely perfectly with full reverence to its purpose. And
and tell them about the swearing in.
Cliff?
Tell them about the swearing in as part of the ceremony as well.
Right. So what's evolved and become a part of the annual Memorial Day tribute is we conduct an oath of enlistment. And so there are anywhere from 6 dozen to 10 dozen young men and women that, as part of their being recruited and joining the armed forces, take their oath of enlistment at the Boulder on the stadium floor during the Memorial Day tribute. And so there's added emphasis to that, that it's not in the back room of the local Army recruiting post. It's in front of 50,000 people. So they're really now on the record for what they have just raised their hand and committed to. No backing out.
And it's always cool to hear the crowd react to that moment.
Yeah, yeah, it's awesome.
I think you've already answered this with one question or another, but what have been some of the greatest challenges through the years putting on the race?
You mean the ones we can talk about?
Amazing. Amazing. Talk or don't talk. Yeah.
Well, in a broad sense, in our market system in this country, somebody starts a new business and it might be a whole new concept. And there's nothing to copy. As they run up against problems or challenges, they have to solve them. I think we're pretty good at solutions. And we kept running up against things that others hadn't run up against. So we were making changes as we were going. A number of the things we've talked about today. So it was the operational challenges to make things better.
Well, I'd like to say one of the things is Folsom Field, where you run, and when they had the turf, grass and other things down there, you all came up with the idea of actually making a portable floor to put over the entire stadium floor and then store it in between races. I mean, and that solved the problem, those kinds of problems.
When it started, others were doing it, and we had to rent equipment. And we proposed to CU, because they have to put it down for graduation too, that we become partners. They decided they wanted to do it, and it cost us, what, Cliff, $75,000 a year to cover the floor of the stadium.
Yeah, correct. And that's we've been doing that since 1998.
Yeah,
I know you've been lucky in one respect. I think over the history of the race, we've had terrible rain maybe once or twice. It's only been really chilly once or twice, but it might not always be sunny, but the conditions are usually good. And I know Frank will attest to you'd rather have it be in the low 50s with overcast skies anyway.
Sure. Yeah. And actually, the course record was set on one of those kind of rainy days. For some reason, literally, there's more oxygen in the air at the street level when it's just enough, moisture on the ground. It doesn't have to necessarily be raining, and that's, the course record was set by at least 10, 15 seconds. And so that's okay. The main problem there is warm up. And so, but that gets into another issue on the clothing, and everyone's clothing to run the race. There's no problem. And then transportation in for all the runners. I mean, it's just a myriad of things that go on. And like I said, Steve and Cliff have a gift, and and they share it.
To digress just a moment, that course record is still held by, still stands for the men.
Right.
And just last year, the women's was broken.
And since they canceled the Halloween mall crawl, some of the interesting costumes that runners wear, the public wears during the race, are always fun to see too.
The only thing we say is you can't wear a costume that extends beyond your body from a safety standpoint.
Yeah. Not that you want to tip your hand, but is anything new planned for the future, especially with the 50th race coming up later this decade?
Cliff?
Well, that's a good question, Dave. Yeah, 2030 will be the 50th running, and we are building initial creative concept lists for that race. Um, at this point, we're just this year we started teasing the 50th running by offering vintage or throwback shirts from select years over the last 46 runnings or 45 runnings of the race. And so we'll continue to unveil another one next year, another one the following year. And we are working on some thoughts for some bigger ideas for the 50th in 2030.
Hey, Cliff, are you bringing back an updated version of the old World's Ugliest Big sweatshirt you had? That's one of my favorites.
You helped us popularize that. Actually, people love that sweatshirt, I think, because you wear it on TV. And, it's one of our favorites too.
You've tracked through the years how many have run in every boulder. What does that count at now?
I'll give you a start. In the 10th year, we came up with the concept, and we spent several months finding out who had run every race. It was the honor system, and some of it could be proven that it not as in that worked. And we had about Cliff, 125, 150. And so that was the starting point. And Cliff, I pass it to you.
Yeah, right. So you started in that year, and I think when you unveiled 3 years before the 10th running, when you unveiled it, you referred to them as a perfect 10. And there's a picture of Frank here at the office wearing that cool bib. And then it was a year or two later, we called it the Dirty Dozen, the Lucky 13. And after that race, Steve, I think you said we need a better name for that. And so it became the Boulder's Boldest. And as of last year, there's 47 that are still running strong or running bold since 1979. Now, here's the tie-in back to Steve, Jim, is that my youngest brother, Steve's youngest son, is one of those 47, and he continues to be in the right place at the right time to keep that streak alive.
That's incredible, really.
Yeah.
Just
By the
incredible.
way, we've been remiss not telling people Cliff is actually Cliff Bosley, the executive director. Steve was the original one and now is famous, I guess, executive director emeritus. So I should tell everybody who Cliff is. Well, we want to thank you all for joining us. Any closing comments?
Good. I'd like to make a closing statement. There are two major decisions that above all the others that I made. One of them was going to the team competition, international team competition, and the second was when I asked Cliff to take over as the director.
Yeah, and what I'd like to say, and if you want to see how these things are predicted, there is a mural in downtown Boulder that shows the race, and I'm obviously in the mural, but just to my side is this little kid running along, and it's from a picture that was taken, and that's Cliff. So Cliff was out there leading the race when he was 10 years old. So
with our history, my history with the race, and certainly Frank with you, goes back a long ways, and back to the Frank Shorter running store and getting my first pair of running shoes in 1977. And you've been a big impact on Steve and the race and me for a long time.
Well, it's been a treat having you on, and especially you, Frank. You're our second gold medalist we've had on. We had Bill Toomey on a few weeks ago talking about the 68 Olympic experience. Except, I guess, in your case, he was invited to go on the dating game and you weren't.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I actually knew Bill Toomey, and he was one of the first people that I met when I started to train on the indoor track. at the University of Colorado because he was still kind of there doing things. So again, there's a blend in the history. There really is, and that's what's fun about thinking about that.
Well, thanks again for joining us, guys. Appreciate it, and look forward
Thank
to
you.
working in the future. So, well, everyone, we hope you're enjoying our podcast. Keep spreading the word. We want to thank our sponsors, of course, Pasta J's of Boulder, 10th and Pearl Street, CU Sports Medicine, and the Colorado Collegiate Chronicle, and of course, Mark Johnson for introducing each moment's number.
That's a wrap on our 23rd podcast. Tune in next week for the next reveal of the state's top 150 moments. We hope that you are enjoying our reminiscing with our Colorado Sports Hall of Fame guests, as well as our trips down memory lane in the state's sports history. A reminder that the Hall offers tours of its museum, as well as Empower Field at Mile High Stadium, and that the class for 2026 will be inducted this April 16th in Denver.